The AAA Daily Advantage Visa earns 5% back on groceries with no cap and no annual fee, and that alone makes it the best credit card for groceries for most people. But here's the catch. The card that wins for you depends entirely on where you actually shop, because the definition of a grocery store is a lot trickier than you think, and the wrong pick quietly costs you hundreds of dollars a year. So, how do you find the best credit card for groceries? You start by understanding what the card companies count as a grocery store, because they do not all agree. American Express, for example, has a very specific definition. A supermarket is a standalone store that sells a full line of food and household supplies. That means a giant Kroger or a Safeway or a Publix counts. But a superstore like Walmart or Target, where you can buy a TV next to the milk, does not count. A warehouse club like Costco or Sam's Club does not count. And a convenience store like 7-Eleven does not count. So if you do most of your shopping at a traditional grocery store, you have a ton of great options. But if you shop at Walmart, Target, Costco, or Sam's Club, your best card changes completely. Let's start with the absolute top earner for a traditional grocery store shopper. The AAA Daily Advantage Visa gives you 5% cash back on groceries with no spending cap and no annual fee. That is the highest uncapped grocery rate on any card in the country, period. You also get 3% back on gas, 3% back on wholesale clubs like Costco, 3% back on drugstores, and 3% back on streaming services. The only real downside is that AAA issues the card through Comenity, which is not a major bank, so the customer service is not as polished as what you get from Chase or American Express. But for the rewards alone, it is a no-brainer for anyone who spends more than a few $100 a month on groceries. The other heavy hitter is the Blue Cash Preferred card from American Express. It offers 6% cash back at US supermarkets, which sounds even better than 5%. That 6% only applies to the first $6,000 you spend per year on groceries. After that, it drops to 1%. So if you spend $500 a month on groceries, that is $6,000 exactly in a year, and you hit the cap right at the end. If you spend $600 a month, you hit the cap after 10 months, and the last 2 months you only get 1%. The card also has a $95 annual fee, but the first year is often waived, so you have to do the math. $6,000 at 6% is $360 cash back. Subtract the $95 fee, and you are left with $265. The AAA card gives you 5% on the same $6,000, which is $300 with no fee, so you come up $35 ahead with AAA. But if you spend less than about $3,500 a year on groceries, the Blue Cash Preferred might actually be worse than a no-fee card because the fee eats up too much of the reward. If you want no annual fee at all, the Citi Strata Premier card earns 3x points at supermarkets. But those are thank you points, which are worth about 1 cent each when redeemed for cashback, so it is effectively 3% back. That is solid, but it is not the best. The Capital One Savor One also earns 3% cash back on groceries with no annual fee, and it has no foreign transaction fees, which is a big deal if you travel. The Wells Fargo Active Cash gives 2% on everything, including groceries, with no annual fee, and that is a great simple option if you do not want to track categories. But here is a question everyone asks: what about Walmart and Target? If you shop at a regular Walmart or a regular Target, the Blue Cash Preferred and the AAA card will not give you 5% or 6%. They will code as a discount store or a superstore, not a grocery store, and you will only get 1%. However, there is a loophole. Walmart Neighborhood Market, which is a smaller grocery-only Walmart, does code as a grocery store for many cards. So if you shop at a neighborhood market, the AAA card gives you 5%, but a regular supercenter Walmart does not. Target is even trickier. Target does not code as a grocery store on most cards, even though they sell groceries. So your best bet for Target is the red card, which gives you 5% off every purchase automatically, or a flat rate 2% card like the Wells Fargo Active Cash. What about warehouse clubs? Costco and Sam's Club do not count as grocery stores on any major grocery card. But the AAA Daily Advantage gives 3% back at wholesale clubs, which is actually better than most. The Costco Anywhere Visa gives you 2% at Costco, so AAA beats it by 1%. Anyway, let's keep going. Sam's Club has its own Mastercard that gives 3% at Sam's Club and 5% on gas, but only if you are a member. If you want a card that works at all 3 types of stores, the Venmo Visa gives you 3% back on your top spending category each month, and if you spend the most on groceries, that category includes warehouse clubs. So Venmo treats Costco as a grocery store, which is rare. The Huntington Voice card also lets you pick a 5% category that includes warehouse clubs, but it is only available in certain states. Now let's talk about online grocery and delivery services. If you order groceries through Instacart, Amazon Fresh, or Walmart Plus, how does it code? It depends on the card. American Express usually codes Instacart as a grocery store, so the Blue Cash Preferred gives you 6%. But some cards code it as an online shopping category or a general merchant, and you only get 1%. The safest bet is the AAA card, which consistently codes Instacart as grocery and gives you 5%. The same goes for meal kits like HelloFresh and Blue Apron. Most grocery cards treat them as grocery, but always test with a small purchase first. Another big question is foreign transaction fees. If you travel abroad and buy groceries in another country, most grocery cards charge a 3% foreign transaction fee, which wipes out your rewards. The Capital One Savor One has no foreign transaction fees and gives 3% back on groceries, so it is the best card for international grocery shopping. The Citi Strata Premier also has no foreign transaction fees and gives 3x points. The AAA card has a 1% foreign transaction fee, which is better than 3%, but not ideal. So if you travel frequently, the Savor One is your best bet. Can you combine multiple cards to get more than 5% back? Yes, but you have to be strategic. The best approach is to use a dedicated grocery card for grocery stores, and then a separate catch-all card for everything else. For example, use the AAA card for 5% at grocery stores and the Wells Fargo Active Cash for 2% on everything else. Or use the Blue Cash Preferred for the first $6,000 in groceries, then switch to the AAA card for the rest of the year. You can also pair a grocery card with a card that gives bonus rewards on gas, like the AAA card already does, so you do not need a separate gas card. One common mistake is ignoring the spending cap. The Blue Cash Preferred has a $6,000 cap, but the Discover It Cashback and Chase Freedom Flex have rotating 5% categories that sometimes include groceries, but only up to $1,500 per quarter. So if you max that out, you still need a backup card. The AAA card has no cap, so it is the best primary card. Another mistake is assuming all grocery stores code the same. Wegmans, for example, codes as a grocery store on most cards, so does HEB. But some regional chains like Winco or Aldi code as grocery just fine. The only way to know for sure is to check your credit card statement after the first purchase. If you see a code like supermarket or grocery, you are good. If you see discount store, you are not. So, which credit card is best for groceries for you? If you shop at a traditional grocery store and spend more than $300 a month, the AAA Daily Advantage Visa is the clear winner. If you spend less than that or want no annual fee, the Capital One Savor One gives you 3% with no foreign transaction fees. If you are a heavy Walmart or Target shopper, you need a different strategy, the red card for Target and the AAA card for Walmart Neighborhood Market, or a flat rate 2% card for everything. If you shop at Costco, the Venmo Visa, or the AAA card at 3% is your best bet. And if you travel abroad, the Savor One is the only grocery card that does not punish you with fees. The bottom line is that the best credit card for groceries is not the one with the highest number on the ad. It is the one that matches where you actually shop, how much you actually spend, and whether you want to deal with an annual fee or a spending cap. The AAA Daily Advantage Visa gives you 5% uncapped with no fee, and that is the best all-around answer for most people. But if your grocery store is a superstore or a warehouse club, the answer changes completely. Pick the card that fits your store, not the store that fits the card. Let's talk about a few more specific quirks that can make or break your grocery rewards. One big one is how store-branded credit cards interact with grocery rewards. If you shop at a store like Kroger, they have their own Kroger Rewards World Elite Mastercard, which gives you 5% back on Kroger brand products when you use their loyalty card, plus 2% on all other grocery purchases at Kroger. But that 5% only applies to Kroger branded items, not everything in the store, so it is not as good as a general grocery card. However, the Kroger card also gives you 2% on gas and 1% on everything else, and it has no annual fee. So, if you are a diehard Kroger shopper, it is a decent backup, but the AAA card still beats it for overall grocery spending. Another store-specific quirk is Publix. Publix codes as a grocery store on almost every card, but they also have their own Publix Mastercard, which gives you 3% back on Publix purchases. That is worse than the AAA card, so skip it. Same with Albertsons and Safeway. Their store cards are not competitive. Now, what about Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods? If you have the Amazon Prime Rewards Visa, you get 5% back on all Amazon and Whole Foods purchases. That includes Amazon Fresh Delivery and Whole Foods in store. So if you are a Prime member and you shop at Whole Foods, That card is actually better than the AAA card because Whole Foods codes as a grocery store on the AAA card too. But the Amazon card gives you 5% with no cap and no annual fee, and it also gives you 2% at restaurants and gas stations. So for Whole Food shoppers, the Amazon Prime Visa is a strong contender. One more card that flies under the radar is the US Bank Altitude Go. It gives you 4% back on dining, but it also gives you 2% back on groceries. That is not the best, but it has no annual fee and no foreign transaction fees. So it is a decent travel-friendly option if you want a simple two-category card. Let us also talk about how to maximize your grocery rewards if you are a heavy coupon user or a bulk shopper. If you buy in bulk at a place like Costco, you are already getting a lower per unit price. So the 3% back from the AAA card or the Venmo Visa is a bonus on top of that savings. But if you use a lot of coupons, you want a card that gives you rewards on the pre-coupon total, not the post-coupon total. Most cards calculate cash back on the final amount you pay, so coupons reduce your rewards. That is fine, but just know that stacking coupons with a high rewards card is still better than using a low rewards card. Another thing nobody talks about is how grocery rewards interact with store loyalty programs. For example, if you shop at Kroger and you use your Kroger Plus card, you get fuel points. Those fuel points can save you up to $1 per gallon on gas. If you also use a grocery card that gives you 5% back, you are double dipping. You get the fuel points from the store and the cash back from the card. That is the ideal scenario. But some stores like Safeway have their own rewards programs that give you discounts on groceries, and those discounts are applied before the credit card transaction, so your cash back is calculated on the lower amount. Still worth it, but the math is slightly different. One more practical tip. Always check your credit card statement after your first grocery purchase to see how the store codes. I have seen cases where a store like Fresh Thyme codes as a grocery store on one card, but as a health food store on another. The only way to know for sure is to look at the transaction description. If it says supermarket or grocery, you are good. If it says merchandise or retail, you are not. And if you see a charge from Instacart, it should say Instacart or the store name, and most grocery cards treat it as grocery. Finally, if you are a student or someone with a thin credit file, you might not qualify for the AAA card or the Blue Cash Preferred, which both require good to excellent credit. In that case, the Capital One Savor One student card gives you 3% back on groceries with no annual fee, and it is easier to get approved for. Or the Discover It Student Cashback gives you 2% on everything for the first year, which is a solid alternative. So the real trick to getting the best grocery rewards is not just picking the highest percentage. It is understanding how your specific store codes, whether you hit spending caps, and whether you compare a grocery card with a store loyalty program. Let's talk about one more card that a lot of people overlook for groceries, the Citi Custom Cash. This card automatically gives you 5% cash back on your top spending category each billing cycle, up to $500 in spending per cycle. If groceries are your biggest monthly expense, that means you get 5% back on the first $500 you spend on groceries every month. That is $25 cash back per month or $300 per year with no annual fee. The catch is that it only applies to one category at a time, so if you also spend a lot on dining or gas, you have to choose which one you want the 5% on. But if groceries are consistently your highest category, the Citi Custom Cash is a fantastic no-fee option, and it has no spending cap on the category itself, just a $500 per month cap on the bonus earnings. That is actually better than the Blue Cash Preferred for moderate spenders, because the Blue Cash Preferred has a $6,000 annual cap and a $95 fee, while the Citi Custom Cash gives you $6,000 in eligible spending per year with no fee. The math works out almost exactly the same, but without the annual fee, the Citi card is simpler. Another card that deserves more attention is the Bank of America Customized Cash Rewards card. You can pick your own 3% category, and one of the options is grocery stores. But you also get 2% back on wholesale clubs and grocery stores combined, which is a nice bonus if you shop at both. If you are a Bank of America Preferred Rewards member, you could boost that 3% to as high as 5.25% on groceries, which beats the AAA card. But that requires having a significant amount of money parked with Bank of America or Merrill Lynch, so it's not for everyone. Quick recap, know what problem you are solving, compare the real monthly costs, check the fees, watch the trade-offs, and only choose the option that still works if life gets messy. If this helped, subscribe for more plain English money explainers.